listening to the Motherhood Experience, a podcast where you are part of the conversation with moms, for moms, and by moms. Let's jump into this episode with me, your host, Val Kleppen. Welcome back to the Motherhood Experience podcast. So glad to have you joining me today as I sit and visit with my next door neighbor, Olivia. Her story is one that is so unique, and I know you're going to enjoy it. You'll probably relate to several pieces of it, but some of it just might blow you away a little bit as you hear her share about her motherhood journey. We had a wonderful time sharing and laughing, and I know that you will appreciate and enjoy this episode. But before we get into it, if you could click the thumbs up or the heart or whatever it is that you're listening to us on or watching us on, if you could follow us on Facebook and Instagram. I know it's so annoying that every person you watch or listen to or follow asks you to do those things, but I wouldn't ask if it didn't help tremendously. So please give us a like and follow, subscribe, whatever it is. It helps the algorithm, which helps us, and I appreciate it and thank you in advance. And now with that out of the way, let's head into my conversation with my neighbor, Olivia Shockley. I'm so excited to have my next door neighbor on the podcast with me today. Olivia, how are you?
Great.
It is a little bit weird that we are next door neighbors and you can't come over here for the podcast interview. I'm not set up for that, but I am excited that you're willing to come on here and share your motherhood journey with all of the listeners. And you are a listener of the podcast. You know I start every episode with ages and stages. So why don't you share with the listening audience ages of your kids and the stage of motherhood you're in?
Okay. So I have 3 kids that I call my own, 2 biological and 1 adopted. So I have a 7-year-old boy, Titus, and a 3-year-old Jackson, also a boy. And then we adopted he is now 22, still living in Oregon. We just recently moved. So that's Trip. So 3 boys, 1 who is an adult who we've kind of claimed as our own, and then 2 littles, very little. Jackson is crazy. It's hard to keep up with. And then Titus is just a bookworm. He's very much like me. So,
well, I think that Jackson is very physically active and Titus is very intellectually active.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've always said like Titus learns through words and asking questions and talking. Like he got this placemat with all the presidents on it, and he has studied it for so long that he knows all the presidents, which president they come before and after. And,
wow.
And like he's been asking Tyler questions about the presidents nonstop. So at one point Tyler hid the placemat because he was like, I can't do it anymore. Like, it was just constant, like the dinner table, the whole conversation was about presidents. And Tyler was like, no, like you need to take a break.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and then Jackson he just gets into everything, typical 3-year-old, but like that's just how he learns. Titus wasn't really that way. Like Titus would take his toys out and play with them. Jackson will throw them against the wall to see what happens, or grab all the games and dump them all out just for fun, and like things like that. So he's a handful, but it's fun. That age is fun.
Yeah. So you have a very interesting motherhood story on how it started for you becoming a mom. I guess we'll say first that you are my next door neighbor. You've lived near us for how many months?
9 months.
Yeah,
like
not less than a year for sure. Yeah. And built a house at the end of our road here, and I just kind of elbowed my way into your life and haven't seen my way out yet. But I heard about your motherhood story. We had the privilege of having like 6 hours in the car together not that long ago. And we had a great time just talking and getting to know one another. And so I heard the whole story and it's pretty phenomenal. So why don't you start with how Trip ended up as your first kid, and he's how many years younger than you?
8.
8 years younger than you.
Yep.
So let's start there. Let's unpack that.
Well, so funny story. He actually moved in with us when Titus was 6 months old. So Titus came first, and then
Okay.
Trip.
Okay.
And so Tyler and I have always wanted to do foster care. We've talked about it since we were dating. And shortly after we got married, we started doing respite care for a friend of ours in Oregon, and she has a bunch of teenage boys. And Trip was there at some point. And so we met him through doing the respite care. And then, yeah, he needed a different living situation. And his caseworker asked us if we'd be willing to take him in, which was not how we expected our fostering journey to begin. Especially because I've never connected well with teenagers. Is that a bad thing to say? Like Tyler did, youth group stuff, and it was just never really my thing. So I never would have gone out of my way to be like, yeah, let's take a teenager in. um, but it was just one of those things. Like they asked us, and we prayed about it, and we gave ourselves a couple weeks to really make it not. We didn't want to just say no right away, because at first it was very daunting, but we gave ourselves time to think about it and pray about it, and we just felt very certain that it was something we were supposed to do. We felt a lot of peace about it, which was supernatural, because again, I would never choose to take in a teenager as like my first, inkling. And then he's only 8 years younger, and we'd never done fostering before. We'd just done respite care. So we had to like become certified. And so we said yes, and he moved in when Titus was 6 months old. So we had a 6-month-old and a 14-year-old who we had just met like in the last, I don't know, 6 months before that. So yeah, that's how it started. And it was really difficult, but it was also like exactly what he needed, having, parental figures that were more like mentors. And then I don't know, like God just brought us together, and it's been awesome. He's doing great. He still calls us, at least once a week, and he's getting married in September, so we're really excited about that.
So if he was 14 when he moved in with you guys, am I doing my math right? Was that 8 years ago?
Oh,
Ish.
yeah.
Was he with you for 8 years, or you've considered him as one of your children for the last 8 years?
Yeah. So that's crazy. We were his age when he moved in. I can't imagine him and Allison being like, yeah, let's take in a 14. Wait, we can't have been his age though. He was 15 when he moved in. It was around there though. I think we were 23.
Wow.
Anyways, yeah.
Are you that much younger than me? Have I been in denial about this whole time?
I think we're like 10 years. No, 12. I don't know. Sorry, I'm giving away your age here.
Math is so hard on the podcast. Hashtag I'm homeschool mom. Okay, so what was it like for him having this little 6-month-old baby that is your and Tyler's son, and he's living with you and expecting you to set up these boundaries for him and kind of mentor him through this stage of life?
Well, I mean, I'm not in his head, but when he first moved in, I feel like most teenage boys, especially, he was an only child growing up until he went into foster care at 14. So he wasn't into kids at all. So at first he was just like, didn't want anything to do with Titus, not in a like malicious way, just like it's a baby. Like I have nothing to do with babies. And, but yeah, I don't know. It's their relationship really grew very gradually and naturally, and it's been really cool to see. And the longer he lived with us, after he got his license and we trusted him with Titus in the car, that in between, He would take Titus to the coast, and like now he likes to talk to Titus on FaceTime and stuff, and it's been really neat to see how
Yeah.
they've truly become brothers.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was interesting because we knew nothing about having a teenager live with us, and there were a lot of things that we would not do again with our own kids. And part of it was like unique situation, but part of it was like we were just like making stuff up. We
Right.
asked
It's just
for
trying to
advice,
figure it
and
out.
then
Yeah.
yeah, and we didn't have the gradual lead up of now he's 10 and now he's a preteen and now he's a teenager.
Well, and you were trying to figure out parenting in general. You had a
Yeah.
6-month-old, like you
Hmm.
weren't sleeping probably.
No, not much. And
So
we were
like,
only
I
yeah,
mean, praise God he was in it because it seems like it was just a season of chaos.
yeah, it was. It's true. It's true.
So tell me about Titus and Jackson and bringing them into the world because that was no small feat. It's either.
Yes. So let's see. When I was pregnant with Titus, I started having high blood pressure in the third trimester, and which is abnormal for me. And so they were kind of keeping an eye on it. They were like, yeah, we'll just keep monitoring it. And it kept getting higher and higher. And, it doesn't help when you go in and you're stressed out about your blood pressure being high and then it gets higher. So we kind of just kept an eye on it. And then, I had midwives and I was going to give birth at a birthing center. And it got high enough that they were like, we're not comfortable with you birthing at the birthing center. So we're going to provide care alongside an OBGYN and you'll birth in the hospital. Like they would still be with me, but we did need an OB so that I could give birth at the local hospital. So we went in for that appointment at 37 weeks just to establish care and to kind of, give him the background and everything. And he was like, yeah, you have high blood pressure, but you don't have any other signs. One, he prefaced it by like, it's probably just high blood pressure. It could be this thing called preeclampsia. It's probably not because, you don't have any of the other symptoms. And he was like, worst case scenario, it's HELLP syndrome. But again, probably not, but we're going to draw labs just in case. And so I didn't think anything of it. And we drew labs and I went home and Tyler went to work. And then he called me that evening at like 5 and he said, so your liver enzymes are high. So you have HELLP syndrome and you need to come get induced like right now. I was like, okay. I wasn't having preterm labor, anything. I did not expect that. So I called Tyler and I was like, so we need to go to the hospital and have a baby. I don't even remember if we had our bag packed or anything. I think we might have. I'm not sure. But so that was 37 weeks, 36 weeks and 6 days, I think. Anyway, so we went there and I got induced and I was on magnesium drip, which sucks because of
So bad.
It was terrible. I told Tyler, I was like, it's like being drunk without any pain relieving effects or any euphoria. It's just like you have no control over your body and I couldn't think straight. And it was awful.
So your stories and mine kind of overlap here, which is something that we talked about on the drive. But I was on magnesium to stop preterm labor with Heston. Oh. And I kind of said the same thing. Like, it's like being drunk and hungover at the same time.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
Yeah.
So terrible.
Yeah.
But it's like,
nausea was, that was terrible.
It's really bad.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
Sometimes.
So, but I had HELLP syndrome with Haley. I remember the first time you mentioned, or one of us did here at the house during Bible study, I think one of us was like, oh, I actually had HELLP syndrome. I think it was you who said it first. And then I was like, I had HELLP syndrome. It's like the women who have HELLP syndrome like find each other. Cause it's not super common, but it's like, you had HELLP syndrome.
Yeah.
So Titus was delivered
after like 40 hours of labor. Yeah, it was awful. Yeah, my body was like, we're not ready yet. Why are you doing this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I went in January 19th in the evening, and I had him January. Okay, so it wasn't 40, it was like 30. It felt like way longer. Now that I think about it, I'm like, oh, I was being dramatic. um, but I had him January 21st at like 2 a.m. And January 21st is my mom's birthday. So it was like super sweet. Like, yeah, it was a super sweet thing that happened because I didn't expect it. I was born, we went in on the 19th, so I expected sometime on the 20th. So that was pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. And were there health issues with Titus right away?
Not really health issues. I don't know. He was fine in terms of like being born early, being induced. He was small. He was 6 pounds 1 ounce, and but they noticed in the like newborn exam that he had a cleft palate. So he was missing like a third or a half of the roof of his mouth. When I say that, a lot of people think of lip, but it was
Mm-hmm.
just the palate. But the frustrating part is that no one told me that meant he couldn't suction, so he couldn't breastfeed. So we spent 24 hours trying to breastfeed, not realizing that
Oh
it wasn't going
no.
to happen, because the nurses were like, well, maybe he can. And then realizing later, once we talked to a specialist, he's like, yeah, no, that's not possible. Maybe if it was a very minor one, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, so no health issues, but he had a birth defect that needed fixed later. So
Yeah. How much later and how
he was a
involved
year.
was?
He was a year old when they fixed it, and the only like issues he might have had with the cleft palate is that we had to feed him with a special bottle that um, allowed him to feed without needing suction. Um, and so there's like a one-way valve, and he fed by chewing on the nipple of the bottle instead of
Mm,
sucking on it. And then he had it fixed at a year old, and we haven't had any issues other than anatomically, like his nasal passageways are narrower, and he had enlarged adenoids and tonsils, so we had to get those out. But the palate itself was one and done surgery, which I'm thankful for. So
yeah. And there's a bit of a gap, 4 years between Titus and Jackson.
yeah, so he was born in 2017, and then in late early 2019 we found out we were pregnant. Not planned. But we were pregnant. We were like, what are we gonna, not what are we gonna do, but just, oh no.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of shocked by that, but then we got used to the idea, and we're like, well, we're just gonna make it work, because we were planning on having another, just not yet. So we were just getting used to the idea, and then at my 10-week ultrasound we found out that I had miscarried. So that was really difficult. I don't mourn. We think it was a girl. We named her Taylor, but I don't mourn her like some people mourn their miscarriages, and maybe it's because it was our second, maybe it's because it was so early. I don't know. But thinking back to the ultrasound and I had to take. I can't remember what the medication's called. I had to take some sort of
Mm-hmm.
medication to induce
Mm-hmm.
the bleeding, because my body
Mm-hmm.
hadn't recognized it. Um, and that was one of the two hardest days of my life, was having to take that. But then after that, after we, had kind of worked through that grief and worked through that, then we were like, well, might as well try and get pregnant, I guess. We kind of got to a point where we are like, well, we were ready for that one after we had, gotten used to the idea. So we started trying to get pregnant sometime that summer. And then we had another miscarriage, and that one was very early. It was like I started bleeding a week or two after we found out I was pregnant. Um, but then it was just like, well, what's going on with Titus? We got pregnant right away. We had no struggles. And so then, I started talking to like my doctor and stuff, and they were like, well, it hasn't been like, you haven't been trying super long. It had only been, I think, 9 months between the two miscarriages. So they weren't worried about it. But so we just tried to just be patient. And it's funny because I was like tracking my ovulation and everything. And then I went to see my midwife, and she was like, just relax, don't track, like just chill. and it'll happen. And I was like, you're nuts. That's not how it works. And I was like, but I have to know. And I'm very kind of control freaky when it comes to my health. And like, I don't know, I just like to know what's going on with my body. So I was like, but no, like I can't just ignore it. And so I did. And then we got pregnant. So I was stressing myself out, I guess. And that was getting pregnant with Jackson. So yeah. And then with Jackson, I also had high blood pressure, but it didn't turn into preeclampsia. So thankfully, and we decided to induce at 37 just because my anxiety was just off the charts. Because I was so nervous about getting preeclampsia again. And I really wish I would have been able to go into labor naturally for once and, you know, have one of my kids at the birthing center. But it was better for my nerves and better all around to just get induced and just not get it over with, but just not be like on pins and needles,
yeah,
you know, hoping that it doesn't keep getting, the blood pressure didn't keep getting worse. So.
Yeah. And Jackson has, I'll find out, health struggles of his own as well.
Yeah. So we found out when I was pregnant at 24 weeks that he had a heart defect. He had a hole between his two upper chambers of his heart and then a very small hole between the two lower chambers and something else with a valve. I can never remember all the details, but we found out at 24 weeks. And so then there was, you know, ultrasounds like every week and just kind of trying to figure out like, okay, what's going to happen after he's born? Initially, they thought he would need surgery at 4 months old. But as I can't remember if they had made the decision later on in my pregnancy or after he was born, but they had determined that it wasn't as severe as they thought. So they were like, well, we can wait until he's, you know, between a year and 2 years maybe. So we were thankful that they didn't have to do it when he was so tiny. Thankfully, he never really had any health issues because sometimes they can, you know, have oxygenation issues and have, you know, not very much energy because their heart's working so hard. And he never had anything like that. So we were like, oh, it's not really affecting him that much. Like, you know, praise God. But he had surgery at 18 months. I'm really bad with dates. I think it was after he had surgery and healed, his energy was like 100 times off the charts. And so we were like, oh, like he was tired. We just didn't know it. We thought he was our chill second kid. No, he's not.
Oh, man.
So, yeah. So now we still have checkups and he still has something that's a little bit concerning that they said could become an issue later. He might need surgery again, or he might never need surgery again. So we just kind of have to get checkups every year, get an ultrasound, EKG, all that stuff to make sure that it's doing well. But so far, he's doing great.
So tell me then, you are a young mother with a baby and a teenager who, surprise, is coming to live with you.
Yeah.
Your baby had a cleft palate, newborn, 6 months infant. You're not sleeping. There's a whole different dynamic in your house as it is. You have 2 miscarriages. You have another son with a heart defect. Also, and I'm kind of filling in a gap here because you mentioned that Titus was born on your mom's birthday, which is significant not just because it was your mom's birthday, but you lost your mom when you were 18?
18, yeah.
And so what I can only imagine, but I would love for you to try to explain if you can, what this season is for you in figuring out parenting on your own for your own 2 children who require like extra nurturing, and there's some big things happening. Even though, they're okay today, like at the time that was a lot going on. And you had Trip at home trying to navigate and help mentor him to make better choices in life than if he were, out on the streets or whatever. And you don't have a mom to turn to as well. Like, what was that season for you? How did you wrestle through that?
I don't know.
Fair.
you just kind of like go through life and you look back and you're like, how did I do that?
Yeah.
I mean, I have a lot of spiritual moms that I'm very thankful for. My mom's sister, I lived with her for I don't know how long, a couple of years, a couple of summers between college and stuff. So I'm very close with her. So we talk a lot, and so she's always been there, supporting me and just always checking in and encouraging me. And then I don't know, I had a very strong church family, so we had Bryce and Julie Bernard at our church in Oregon. They did our premarital, and we were a part of a small group with them, and they just kind of became our like mentors, pseudo parents, kind of, like we became
Yeah.
very close with them. And so she's another person that I've talked with a lot and has also been very supportive and encouraging. And um, I don't know, I just had a lot of older women in my life that I've been able to turn to. And um, I'm not really a call on the phone person, but that I can text, or if I'm back when I lived in Oregon, I'd meet up with them. So I don't know, you just kind of make it through. And my dad has been so amazing. Like I our relationship has gotten so much stronger and deeper, after my mom died. And part of that was just growing up, but part of it was, going through that together. Um and he's just been our cheerleader and our rock. And it's just he's supported everything. And when everyone else thought we were nuts for getting married so quickly, like we got married less than 2 years after we started dating, I think. Yeah. And was it? Yeah. And then when we took trip in, I'm so bad with dates. Don't ask me when things
Well,
happened.
what I think is funny is, so I've hosted, by this point 40 some
Yeah.
episodes of the podcast, and so many within 1 year. Like
Oh, really?
from
Wow.
from dating to engage 6 months or less, from engaged to married 6 months or less. So many of the moms. And so I'm just like, you tell your family
It's fine.
you took too long.
Well, okay, honestly, we started dating and got married or got engaged 8 months later. We probably would have gotten married sooner, but we were in college. We got married right before our senior year. So we waited 11 months after getting engaged. So it was over the summer. But yeah, we had a lot of mixed opinions about that. People were like, you don't even know this guy. Like, what are you doing?
Oh,
But
wow.
it's worked out well so far,
Yeah, it's
graduation.
been yeah, you've got this. So you've talked about Oregon a lot, and having established community, church family,
Mhm.
friends group, and all of that. And last year, the Lord was like, and let's pull up those roots and plant them in the middle of nowhere,
Right?
South Dakota. And so you and I have talked about this several times, and I would love for you to kind of share what that journey has been like for you. First of all, with, because there's ongoing checkups and appointments with your boys. You said that Trip is about to get married. He's still in Oregon. And so you're still kind of between these two worlds. But what was it like for you thinking, oh man, not just leaving everything that you knew and that you were familiar with, but your boys
Mhm.
too, coming to this new place you knew nobody? What was that like?
Terrifying. um, Tyler and I had always talked about, same with the fostering conversation, like we'd always talked about moving outside of the Northwest. He grew up in Eastern Washington. I grew up in the Willamette Valley, like in the middle of Oregon. And both sides of my family are there, like extended. 90% of my family on both sides are there. And we've, like you said, we've put down roots after getting married and everything. And then, but I don't know. I don't know why we always felt like we would move at some point. At first, it was like, oh, it sounds like a grand adventure. Then you get older and you're like, that's actually really scary. Um, but we'd always wanted land. We'd always been interested in, kind of providing more for ourselves and being more. Yeah, I don't know. Tyler said that he always wanted to be a farmer growing up, and then I was always obsessed with like Laura Ingalls books. So, not to idolize how awful, not awful, but difficult life was back then,
Yeah.
but just a like simpler life, a life that kind of is closer to the earth. And yeah, so we talked about it for a long time, and then we were just freshly married, and then we had first kid with a birth defect and needed surgery, and we were an hour away from a children's hospital. So we were super
Mm.
grateful that we only had to drive an hour to have these specialist appointments and the surgery. Some people flew in for these sorts of appointments at this hospital. So, and then we, Trip moved in, and so we were in Oregon for the foreseeable future with, him growing up and Titus needing these appointments, and then Jackson came along, also needed the appointments for his birth defect. So it just was never the right time to move, but we still felt like it was going to happen at some point. We just didn't know
Hmm.
when or where we were going to move. We started talking about, maybe we could get land in Eastern Oregon. Maybe we're not going to leave the state. I don't know. So we started looking around, and land is so expensive out there. And if it's not expensive, it's like multiple hours from any grocery stores. And we weren't willing to be that rural. so we, so back up. I don't even know how we decided like it was time to start looking, but Tyler would know. We started looking I think it was shortly after Trip moved out. So he moved out when he was 20, almost 20. He moved out. And then within the next year or so, we just kind of felt like I guess it was time to start looking at land. And it was kind of a curiosity thing at first. And then, we started, I don't know, it just kind of became more real. And his brother lives in North Dakota, and his dad lived in Wyoming at the time. Now he lives in North Dakota as well. But so we kind of knew a couple of people out here. And so we just kind of started moving further eastward and started trying to find land that we could afford. And it took a while. So, and at first we wanted land with a house, but that turned out to be a lot more difficult to find, the amount of land that we wanted. And we didn't want a ton, but even just a couple acres with a house already on it was still pretty expensive. And so we ended up finding this 10 acres in South Dakota. And yeah, the price was right and the timing was right. And we were able to use some of the funds from selling our house in Oregon to pay for it. And then we started talking about, okay, we have to live somewhere. So we like, I don't remember if we bought the land before we'd figured out the house part or not. But we started talking to builders, and our budget was pretty low. And so it was hard to figure out, like, how are we going to make this work? And so we talked to a few different builders, and none of them were like, yeah, you can't do that for that price. And we were looking for a small house, but still. And then we looked at manufactured homes, and none of that was working out. Like, they were too expensive, or the reviews were terrible. And we're like, we don't want our house to fall apart right after we move in. So we found a builder here who he took a chance on us, and he told us later, he was like, yeah, like I normally wouldn't have taken on a house, that was this small and this low budget. But, I talked to Tyler on the phone, and I figured I like this kid, so I'm going to make it work. So Tyler
I
charmed him,
love
I
that.
guess.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So is pretty cool to see everything kind of line up. And I don't know specifics. Tyler's better at specifics, but there were so many times where we were thinking, how are we going to make this work? Like, are we really supposed to do this? And then something would come through, whether it was financing or an answer to a question, or, John being willing to build our house for us, or things like that. Yeah, it became obvious that this is what we were supposed to do. And one of the things that I was most worried about with moving was being away from friends and family, because
Yeah.
I'm not the type of person to go out and just like go to moms groups and things like that. Like that is really difficult for me. I'm the person that like sits on the edge and just kind of minds her own business and is scared of talking to people. So I was like, how am I gonna like, make a community in someplace brand new? But during COVID, I didn't see a lot of my friends and family for a long time. And that was kind of, I feel like God kind of used that to just show me like, it will be okay,
Hmm.
um, you can do this. And, God brought me a built-in friend with you guys. So my neighbor who just, when did we first meet? Oh, we were checking out the land and you just like
You and
popped down the
you
driveway.
and Titus. Okay, I feel like I have to tell the story.
You have to tell the story.
Which I also think is funny that you even know the story. The fact that I was comfortable enough to be like, by the way, Olivia, here's how that whole thing
I
went
was
down.
stalking you.
So, well, we knew like the surveyors had come to test the soil and all this stuff. So we knew someone was going to be building a house like right there, right outside of our property line. And we were like, oh man, there could not be worse news right now. So we were, totally selfishly not wanting that to happen. And it was between two blizzards.
Yeah, I got delayed.
Yeah. So Brent he was in the kitchen doing something. I don't know, washing a dish or something. And I hear him say, Val, there's people. I was like, what? And so I come running in and he's like, they're walking up the hill. You should go meet them, is what he says. And I was like in sweats and not appropriately dressed for like making a first impression, we'll say. And I had just made I don't even remember, some like salted caramel fruit dip or something. And we were stuffing our faces with apple slices and graham crackers in this dip. And so I got a little container of it and threw some of the dip in there and put a lid on it. And I was going to deliver it to our other neighbors down the hill, which meant I would have to drive right by you.
Darn.
And so I'm in the pickup, like towering over you, and you're with Titus. And I get up to you and I was like, well, hello. Who are you? What's happening
here?
Like, I was just on my way to be an amazing neighbor and bring a treat to these neighbors down the hill. And there's people here. So I talked a little bit to you, and I think Titus was even throwing snowballs at the pickup, and you were like, please don't do that, Titus. And you were also FaceTiming with Tyler.
I was trying to give him a tour of the property.
Because you bought the property sight unseen.
Yep.
Which we didn't talk about that. You bought it sight unseen. You didn't even come to be like, are there psychos next to us? And turns out there are. But, so that was the first time that we met. And then it was, the weather had cleared up, obviously, by the time that you guys actually, because that was, I think, in April.
Mm-hmm. It was the beginning of April.
Of last year. Yeah. And so the weather had, by the time you guys actually moved out here later in the summer, then Brent was out mowing. And I was like, it's taking him forever to mow. Like, did he have that? I was panicked. I was like, did he have a stroke? Did he get run over by the lawnmower? Because we have the app, that says like where you are, and he wasn't moving. And I was like, oh, this is the worst. So I like threw on my chicken boots and go like trucking out there. And it's just like, oh, he's talking to No, I was running. Actually, like I got far enough out into the driveway where I could see there were other people and that he was fine. And so I was like, I'm not, like, Val doesn't run. Okay. So then I walked over, and if I'm running, everybody better be running because something is up. So we walk over and we talked for like hours, but that was you and Titus and Jackson and Tyler. So it was all four of you there. And that was like the first time that was the first time that you guys had met Brent, and it was the first time that we all kind of met together. So,
Yep.
and we've just been in your space ever since.
Well,
But
I
we were
haven't
here
moved
first.
yet, so that's not being too bad.
You just moved in. So what would you say then? Because you're not the only mom who has like uprooted and gone somewhere new and worried about that in the process. And so what would you say have been kind of like your saving graces in this process for, finding new medical care in a new place and community and all of those things?
Well, I mean, medical care, we asked our previous doctors what they would recommend in the area, and obviously like they don't all know each other, but I was like, maybe they know like a really good
Right.
hospital that's near where we're going to be living. And so they recommended Minneapolis, which is 6 hours away. um so not ideal, but I've realized when you live out here you just expect to drive at least an hour to go anywhere, which I'm not used
Yes.
to. In Oregon I lived in the capital and then 25 minutes from the capital. So it used to be like, I had grocery stores all around me. And when I lived in the capital, I would hesitate if I had to go across town, which was only 20 minutes. And I was like, I really want to go. And now it's a necessity. That was a rabbit trail. But
Yeah.
um, so I don't know, the medical care, we just asked our previous doctors for advice and just did a lot of research and reviews online, I guess. And I mean, community, I feel like you just kind of got to get out there, which is hard for me to say
Yeah.
because it's really difficult. But
But
and
I think also in your case, like you got a job right away
yeah,
at the
the
at the
local
store
store,
in
yeah,
town. You guys started like serving right away in town. I mean,
that was Tyler. I mean, I did get the job, but that was very much like I need money, and
yeah.
I felt very called to take that job, and I'm very grateful I did because I did get to know a lot of people.
Yeah.
But that was a job. Tyler's the one that's like, let's join the community center and let's like host a game night once a month. So really my saving grace is marrying an extrovert who just brings me along
Right.
while he gets to know the community. He's like, and here's my life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like God just kind of brought people near, like you, and like, we started going to your church. um, and that happened pretty quickly, which I'm thankful for. And um, I don't know. I always have to remind myself that other people are nervous too, like to meet new
Hmm.
people. Not everyone, some people are just enjoy it, weirdos. But I will never understand. But
Oh,
it's like everyone is second guessing themselves and wondering what they're going to say, and so I just have to remind myself that we're all in the same boat, and so we might as well just rip off the band-aid, I guess.
yeah.
Say hello.
Yeah. And I do think too, when you have so much else going on, because, it's one thing to build a house and then to move into it. And, there's all these separate components, but when you have them all going on at the same time and you
Mm-hmm.
don't know anybody
Mm-hmm.
and you're still trying to find your way around town, like you know how to get to Walmart and Menards, you're good.
Yeah.
Like, and they're right next to each other. It's fine. But you have all of this going on at one time. Like it can be really overwhelming. And I'm saying that as someone who, did that 3.5 years ago now. But also it feels like at this point, it kind of feels like we've always been here.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I hope that day comes for you
Yeah.
soon where you feel like we've always been here. This is home.
Well, and I already get like little inklings of that sometimes. I feel like because I got to know you really fast, and then you started hosting the Bible study for our hilltop, which is, three other ladies that I've gotten to know. more than just, at the store I got to know who people were, but I don't really like get to know people super
Yeah.
well. Um, but like with the Bible study is like, I feel, I don't know, I'm grateful to be able to get to know people so quickly. And
Hmm.
I don't remember why I was saying that, but I lost my train of thought.
I think you were going to close by saying, like, and basically all of you who don't have Val as a neighbor, I feel sorry for you. I think that's where you were.
Sucks for you. Good luck.
Uh, well, I do want to ask though, like with, Trip is about to get married, and I know that you're going to be like involved in attending his wedding, and you got your 7 and 3-year-olds, and there's like, ongoing things to take care of. You recently made a decision to stay home and not have a job outside of the home. Do you think your family size will increase? Are you open to that? Are you kind of like, there's been so much that has happened? Like, I don't mentally have the capacity to think about that right now.
That's a very interesting question. Tyler and I have been talking about that for a while.
Oh,
Um,
oh.
um, yeah, so after Jackson was born, I chose to get my tubes removed just because I was terrified of getting HELLP syndrome again. And my
Hmm.
anxiety was so off the charts with Jackson that I did not want to deal with that again. And looking back, like sometimes I go back and forth of like, should I have done that? Because I loved being pregnant and I would love to experience natural childbirth and not induction, where everything is so much more intense because your body is like,
Yeah.
what is going on? But I know that, I don't know. Anyways, I I'm grateful for the two boys, but we do feel very certain that we will do foster care or adopt at some point, and we don't really know what that will look like. But we've it's always been a conversation, and it's always been a plan. So we're hoping that once we're able to build Tyler's office, that so right now we have 3 bedrooms. The two boys are in one bedroom. Our office is in one bedroom, and then we sleep in the other.
Hmm.
So hopefully Tyler can work downstairs, and then this third line upstairs can become, another kid's bedroom. But we've been talking about what was it? It was, what are we going to do first? Dog, cat, chickens, or kids? It's like we can't do it all at once. So what's first? Because
uh,
we've been poor Tyler. He's been waiting since we got married to get a dog, but it's always been like, oh, we're in an apartment. And then when we bought our house, it was like, but we're probably going to move. And then we moved here, and so he's like, so now I can get my dog. And I was like, but you also want chickens this spring,
yeah,
so
I'll tell you, I mean, not that I'm biased at all. But I mean, chickens give you breakfast every
that's what
day.
yeah.
And a dog deposits things in the yard, but you don't want to eat any
You
of it.
don't, yeah, right?
No.
I know. We're probably gonna build the coop soon and get chickens. And poor Tyler, I keep sending him videos of our kids when they were babies, and I'm like, but don't you want one? He's like, stop it. So his thing is he wants to be out of diapers for a while because we just potty trained Jackson, and he's like, I need
Yes.
a break from diapers. So I have to give him that. Then we'll see.
Oh, goodness. Well, I mean, you do what you have to do, but I feel like you also have to get chickens. And I knew part of that, I think, but I also didn't know part of it. And I'm so eloquent right now. I feel like my brain just stopped working suddenly.
Okay, mine's already done that a couple times.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, I'm so thankful that you agreed and were willing to come on and be a guest. Your story is so unique, and I loved hearing about it. And when we were in the car together, and even again tonight, there were some things that I didn't know. And I think it's so incredible that as you took in another human to care for that was only 8 years younger than you, that still blows me away. But also, it's, I mean,
too. I still don't know how we did it.
but just to see how, you know, the call for nurturing and the call for caring for others has been on your life for, and we didn't even talk about your job in Oregon, like in healthcare. So there was a part of that too, where you were just caring for people all the time. And so I just think that's so cool. And I'm glad to have you as my neighbor. Like if we had to have anybody, I'm glad it worked out that it's you guys.
We made the cut.
Well, any parting words for any moms listening that might be, whether it's health issues with their kids or starting a new chapter, anything you would say to encourage them?
You have to warn me about these types of questions, Val.
Dun, dun, dun.
I mean, for us, like our faith is really what has brought us through, you know, like just God is the one who orchestrated us being able to come out here, and I'm thankful that we have had such a strong, I guess, just a strong community behind us, you know, church and family, and so I don't know about advice, but I guess just finding your tribe, you know, whether it's a church family or I joined some Facebook groups when our kids had, you know, I found out about our kids' birth defects. And even if it wasn't, you know, some of it was medical advice, not medical advice, but just kind of going through surgery together and things like that. But part of it was just like, okay, I'm not the only one struggling with this. And so, yeah, I guess just finding people that can walk with you through, whether it's moving, whether they're supporting you from where you're moving from or getting involved where you're moving to, or health issues and just being a mom in general. Like, that's why I like this podcast, because I listen to it and I'm like, oh, like I've been through that. Or, you know, just like some of the amazing things that some moms have been through, and just knowing that they came out on the other side stronger for it, and you know, learned from it. And it's encouraging to know that yeah, I guess that there is another side to the difficult things.
Yeah. And just so everybody knows, I didn't even pay her to say that. So
no.
Thank you, Olivia, again. And I guess I'll see you soon, because you're like right there. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Motherhood Experience podcast. To join our exclusive TME community, head over to themotherhoodexperience.com/learn more. Be sure to follow the Motherhood Experience on Facebook or Instagram, and please leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment below, and we'll catch you next time.